Hello, this is Kenneth Jernigan, and what we're going to talk about today on this rant is Socrates. Okay? Some of you don't have the money to go to college or whatever, so I'm going to teach you a little bit about Socrates from what I've learned from college, from the textbook and stuff like that. And we had to give a speech, so I'm going to give you my speech here. Okay, my speech is on how does Socrates support his ideas in the Apology in your textbook. Okay, so Socrates is a guy who's on trial, and this is why he's on trial. He is accused of misleading the youth to corruption and not believing in the gods that his state believes in, or his country. He doesn't believe in God. That's pretty much what they're saying. He says that the oracle said that he is the... So here is him defending himself. He says, the oracle said that I am the wisest man of all living today. The oracle is the high priest at that time, and supposedly the gods speak through them. And he said, surely this is not the case. He said, I know I'm not the wisest man. So he goes to a wise man who he goes to this wise man, and he says, I'm just going to prove that I'm not as wise as him. I'll ask him a few questions and you'll see how wise he is. But this man isn't really wise, he's just wealthy. See, Socrates thinks he's wiser than him because he's much more wealthy and much more powerful. And he asks this man a bunch of questions, and then he finds out he's not very wise. And Socrates says exactly, he knows nothing. So evidently he wasn't very wise at all. And so he tells this man, you think you're very wise, but you're not. And then he starts talking about him in front of a bunch of people, and the man gets mad. And so then he goes to several other wise people, and he talks to them, and he thinks, well, this is just this one guy. But he goes to several other wise people to prove them wiser, and he finds out they are all foolish. He's just going around asking questions. So he tells them that, and he talks about them, and so he gets a bunch of rich and wealthy people mad at him. Okay, and so... And this is what happens when the rich and powerful are mad at you. They try to kill you, so. Anyways, though, so he thinks that's why they've got him on trial. And anyways, though, and then he goes to defend himself during the trial against another person. And he says, while he doesn't clearly state that he doesn't not believe in the gods. He says he believes in gods. See what I'm saying? And so, but he says, how can you say I don't believe in the gods? He says, can you believe in horsemanship and not believe in horses? And he says several other things like that. Like, can you believe in teaching and not teachers? Can you believe in craftsmanship and not believe in the craftsman? And he says, because he said he believes in divine things, how can you say I believe in divinity, but don't believe in the gods? So that was his defense about not believing in the gods. And then he says, and as far as misleading the youth, if I did so, it was unintentionally. Why are you holding me here trying to kill me when if someone does something unintentionally, you should take them aside and correct them? Instead, you're holding me here trying to kill me as if I did it intentionally. And so the trial ensues. And he also says during the trial, he says, he stays true to his philosophy. He says he rejects all of the popular things that people go for. Wealth, riches, power, and all that stuff. And a bunch of horses and a bunch of men. He said he just goes for virtue, he says. And that got me thinking, most people are average. So if you are smarter than average, then most people aren't going to agree with you because you're going to say things that they know nothing about. So I thought that was profound. And he says, and so anyway, so he goes on to say, and honestly, he says, I would rather, he says, he would rather search for virtue rather than being popular. And if he can't, he would rather die. And then he goes, so then he's sentenced to die. They vote on him to die. It's a close vote. And he says, in his final statements, he says, "It is much easier and more honorable not to suppress others, but to make yourself as good as you can." And today, we have all these people saying you shouldn't do this. We have the Democrats. We have the Republicans. If you're a member of one of those parties, you say, these people shouldn't do this. And those people over there shouldn't do that. And those people, we should punish those people like that. And those people shouldn't believe that way. He says, to who with all that? Forget about all that. He says, quit worrying about other people and worry about making yourself a better person. See, that's what these people are doing. They're worried about what Socrates says. They're so fixed on what he's saying that they can't escape from it. They can't worry about what they're saying. And then he goes on in his final statements. He says he has one final request. He says, to punish his sons if they care for riches more than virtue. So that's what he's mainly about. When you piss the rich and powerful off, well, that might happen to you. And so he says in his final statement, it's a famous statement, he says, but now the time has come, and we must go away, I to die, and you to live. Whether life or death is better, is known to God, and God only. And then he was dragged to a cell and forced to drink poison and die. So, anyways, so that's Socrates, and he was pretty much just, and some of the things he said. So anyway, so he goes down as a martyr, and he's remembered until the day, all the way until the day, and for the things he said and stuff like that. And even Greek themselves, after years, I think it was years later, they realized they were wrong in putting him to death and actually had a moment of silence or some sort of event for him. And, so what do you think? Socrates was famed as saying, the unexamined life is not worth living. Anyway, so he would rather, he said, if you let me go, but make me promise not to teach my philosophies and stuff, he said, I would rather you just sentence me to death. And so anyways though, so I just want to say that, so just because a lot of people are against what you say, doesn't mean you're not right. Because if you're smarter than average, then you're in the 1 percentile, the 20 percentile. And everyone else is the 80 percentile. So you have more people against you than for you. See what I'm saying? So don't really worry about that. Just seek the truth. And if you think something's the truth, stick to it, irregardless of the consequences. That's what Socrates did. Alright, so there we go. Thank you.